So you might be wondering, we've got the new iPhone, the new Apple Watch, but what the hell's happening with this year's base iPads? Well, we do have some new tidbits, so let's dive right in. Now, in case you're wondering, every single year since 2017, we've seen a new base iPad, and so I was frankly surprised. There's literally been no news regarding the iPad 11, and now we have a possible reason as to why this is the case. Credible Apple source Minshew Kuo tells us we likely are not getting any new iPads till early 2024. Now, as to why this is the case, he does not tell us, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the recession because consumers currently are not spending as much as they used to, but also anything Apple would have released is going to be a minor refresh that I'm guessing they thought was not worth releasing because consumers are not going to be rushing to stores to buy a new iPad with a slightly better chip inside. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Because yes, let's now talk about the upgrades we could see with iPad 11. I know everyone in the tech community wants to see the budget iPads finally get Apple Pencil 2 support or a panel that's laminated, but I doubt we're getting any of those changes. I was hoping the iPad 10 would flop so hard on its face because of its terrible value, but it seems, as per usual, the techies got it wrong because we did not realize that regular consumers couldn't care less about those emissions. Yes, it seemingly is doing well, and so here's an important tip for other companies. Your consumers won't care about higher prices and the lack of some pretty key features as long as you give them a ton of fun colors. Because at the end of the day, who cares about a display gap when this iPad comes in bright yellow? Okay, jokes aside, because the iPad 10 has surprisingly sold well, many of the compromises we complained about are likely never going to be fixed. Because why should they spend money on adding these higher-end features when only a small portion of their user base, aka the nerds, actually care about those? So for one, you can expect iPad 11 to continue using Apple Pencil 1, especially when regular consumers clearly don't care about the absurd and absolutely stupid charging methods. Apple would rather differentiate the range and stick to the older Pencil for this iPad. Plus, they have the landscape camera that takes up the space needed for the Apple Pencil charging strip. And do you really think Timothy wants to re-engineer the internals of this and sacrifice those juicy profits? Hell no. I will say though guys, the EU might come to save the day because, of course, they forced Apple to implement USB-C on the iPhone, and well, the legislation also applies to accessories, so I would not mind a USB-C version of Apple Pencil 1 because instead of having to rely on a stupid dongle, you can of course plug the pencil directly into the iPad. And yes, it still doesn't look as elegant as the Apple Pencil 2 charging methods, but I'll take it guys. Another thing people complained about was the lack of a laminated panel on this iPad. Now this has been a staple of all budget iPads since their conception, and I also don't see this changing anytime soon. Now to be fair, someone who did review the iPad 10 for the channel, the air gap on this actually is not as apparent now, so I can look past this. And do remember that panels that are not laminated are cheaper to repair, which is an important factor for schools and parents since kids manage to break everything, so I'm not too annoyed they're not changing this. And so now you may be wondering, what exactly is different with the iPad 11? Well, I think there's going to be two key changes, and that's the SoC and pricing. First, let's talk about the SoC. So this, of course, is the simplest upgrade Apple can give us. They do this usually with the base iPads, because apart from the iPad 10, the rest of the budget iPads all look the same for the most part, and were just rehashes of the OG iPad Air design from 2013. So it really was the SoC that was slightly better on each version. So of course we can expect that with this refresh. Yes boys, we're jumping to A15. And actually that's why I'm low-key surprised we're allegedly not getting this new iPad 11 this year, because logistically speaking it makes sense for Apple to move to A15. It's currently being used on a wide range of products like the Apple TV, the iPhone 13, the SE, the 14, the iPad mini, so I'm sure it's going to be simpler and cheaper for their supply chain to allocate this widely produced SoC for the base iPads. But also more importantly, the iPhone 12 has now been discontinued. it's actually been straight up banned in some countries because of radiation concerns. So that's fun. But anyways, because the iPhone 12 is now gone, the A14 is basically out of circulation. As far as I'm aware, no other product has this apart from the iPad 10. So why continue producing this for one single iPad when they could just be using the A15 that of course they already produce for a ton of other products? Remember guys, Tim is a logistics mastermind, and so our quote says we likely aren't getting any new iPads in 2023. I could still see Apple releasing one because of this reason. The next big change is going to be pricing, and more specifically a price cut. Last year with the iPad 10, the price shot up to $450, which was a massive increase that I thought would put off consumers, but it clearly didn't. And so while there is a small chance Apple does not change pricing, I still do hope for a price cut. Why am I so hopeful? Well, generally when Apple redesigns their base products, they do come with a price increase because of all the wonderful changes, but within a few years, drop back down to their regular price. Let's take for example the MacBook Air. The 2018 model gave us a major redesign that was priced at $1199, which of course back then was a major increase over the regular $999 price point we had come to expect. However, in 2019, Apple gave it a $100 price cut, and then in 2020, just in time for the M1 refresh, it dropped back down to $999, and we're already seeing Apple do the same with the M2 MacBook Air, because this also initially was $1,200, but this year it did get a $100 price cut, and should hopefully be $999 once again once it gets M3. And so apply the same thing to this iPad. Yes, it's somehow selling pretty well at $450, but I'm sure Apple wants a lower starting price for the iPad range, and while they can currently fill that spot with the iPad 9, it will soon have to be killed off because it has the Lightning port, and Apple's going all in on USB-C, or being forced to go all in, and so much like the MacBook Air, this new design is eventually going to come back down to $329. I'm assuming the iPad 11 first drops to $379, and then the iPad 12 brings it down to $329. However, I do want to mention, if Mr. Quo's right, I could maybe see the iPad 10 getting a price cut this year. Now yes, Apple giving us a price cut's unheard of. I think the only time it happened with an existing product was the OG HomePod, but that's because it was a massive disaster. However, if we do see an October event or a press release for new Macs later this year, I could see Apple quickly mentioning that they're continuing to make USB-C the standard across the range, and so the iPad 9 is going to be killed off, but as a result, the iPad 10 becomes $399 or $379, which would be a much sweeter deal, guys. I guess we'll see what happens, but if you're waiting for the iPad 11 to release, based on what Minchi Kuo tells us, I think the release won't happen until spring 2024, so yes, unfortunately guys, there is going to be quite a long wait. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.